6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Neil.
And I'm Sam.
People in the UK are enjoying a 4-day holiday as part of the celebrations for Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee.
A jubilee celebrates the anniversary of a special event, and the word is mostly associated with the royal family. In 2022, Queen Elizabeth II celebrates her Platinum Jubilee, commemorating 70 years since she became Queen in 1952.
People are doing all kinds of things to celebrate, from large events at Buckingham Palace and St Paul's Cathedral to smaller street parties in towns and cities up and down the country and abroad. In this programme, we look at the Platinum Jubilee in an unusual way by hearing about a cake competition to make the official Jubilee cake, the Platinum Pudding. And as usual, we'll be learning some related vocabulary as well.
This isn't the first celebration of Queen Elizabeth's reign, the period of time when a monarch rules a country. In 1977, the Queen celebrated her Silver Jubilee, marking 25 years as Queen, followed by her Golden Jubilee in 2002 and her Diamond Jubilee in 2012.
But what's so special about this year's Platinum Jubilee is that Queen Elizabeth II is the first British monarch ever to spend 70 years on the throne. And I have a question about it, Sam. Queen Elizabeth II is Britain's longest ever reigning monarch, but who was the previous longest reigning before her? Was it A, Henry VIII, B, Elizabeth I, or C, Queen Victoria?
I know it's C, Queen Victoria.
OK, I'll reveal the answer at the end of the programme. As the first monarch ever to have a Platinum Jubilee, many celebrations are being planned for the Queen. These include an official birthday parade, Trooping the Colour, which ends with jet planes flying over Buckingham Palace, and the Platinum Pageant, a live concert in front of the palace featuring music and dancing, puppets of the Queen's favourite pets, her corgi dogs, and a performance by Ed Sheeran.
And that's just in London. All across the UK, street parties are being held for people to eat and drink with friends and neighbours. There's a tradition of inventing a new food dish to commemorate Jubilees, going all the way back to the Victoria Sponge, a cake named after Queen Victoria. This year, a competition was held to find a new dish to become the official pudding of the Jubilee. Here's BBC reporter Daniela Relf to explain more.
First, there was a Victoria Sponge, then Coronation Chicken. Now we have a Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Pudding. The winning lemon Swiss roll and amaretti trifle is a twist on a traditional trifle, with layers of Swiss roll, jelly, custard, mandarins, amaretti biscuits and cream.
In 1953, a mix of chicken and curry cream sauce called Coronation Chicken was invented to celebrate Queen Elizabeth's coronation, the ceremony at which she was made Queen.
This year, competition winner Gemma Melvin has invented a lemon and Swiss roll amaretti trifle as the official Jubilee cake. Trifle is a sweet, cold pudding made of 3 layers, a layer of fruit and cake, a layer of custard, and a top layer of cream.
Gemma's Jubilee trifle is a twist on a traditional trifle. When talking about food, people use the phrase a twist on something to describe a new variation of a traditional recipe using different, exciting ingredients.
Gemma learned her winning recipe from her grandmother's. She wants her trifle to be the people's pudding, something to be enjoyed by everyone. Here is Gemma Melvin describing how she felt to discover her trifle had been chosen as the official Platinum Pudding.
I cannot believe it. Everything that I was up against was just the most beautiful desserts and puddings with beautiful stories. This quite humble trifle has won is a bit surreal.
Gemma describes her trifle as humble, modest and not proud. Although the pudding contains ingredients like amaretti biscuits and cream, which are good enough for a queen, she wanted to base it on a humble trifle, something everyone around the country can make.
Enjoying a bowl of Gemma's Platinum Pudding sounds like a great way for some to celebrate the Queen's 70-year reign.
Which reminds me of your question, Neil. We know Elizabeth II has reigned for 70 years, but who was the second longest serving monarch? I said it was C, Queen Victoria.
I'm glad you were so sure because you were correct, Sam. Victoria was queen for almost 64 years, which is a long time, but not as long as Elizabeth.
Okay, let's recap the vocabulary from this programme about the Queen's Jubilee, a celebration of the anniversary of a special event, usually involving the royal family.
A king or queen's reign means the period of time they rule a country.
A coronation is the ceremony at which someone is made monarch, the king or queen.
Trifle is a popular pudding made of a layer of fruit and cake, a layer of custard, and a top layer of cream.
If you say a food dish is a twist on something, you mean it's a variation of a traditional recipe, using new and exciting ingredients.
And finally, someone who is humble is modest and not proud.
If you were inspired by this recipe, why not try making it? But that's all from us. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Sam.
And I'm Neil.
Have you ever played the game Cluedo, Neil? The idea is that the person playing detective discovers who the murderer is, where the crime took place, and which weapon was used.
The last time I played Cluedo, it was Professor Plum in the library with the dagger.
Cluedo is based on a very popular type of book, the murder mystery, sometimes called a whodunit, a story about a murder which doesn't reveal who the murderer is until the end.
The Queen of Murder Mysteries is a British writer who was born in 1890. Her books are read all over the world and have been translated into 103 different languages. Her name is Agatha Christie.
To date, over 2 billion copies of her crime novels have been sold worldwide, making her the best-selling novelist of all time and the subject of this programme.
Perhaps her best-known story is Murder on the Orient Express, a whodunit featuring her most famous detective Hercule Poirot, who starred in 33 of Agatha Christie's books.
More about that later, but as usual, I have a quiz question for you, Neil. Poirot may be Agatha Christie's most famous detective, but he isn't her only one. So who is Agatha Christie's other fictional detective? Is it A, Hetty Wainthropp, B, Jessica Fletcher, or C, Miss Marple?
I'll guess it's A, Hetty Wainthropp.
Okay, Neil, I'll reveal the answer at the end of the programme.
As mentioned, one of Agatha Christie's most famous books is Murder on the Orient Express. The story takes place on a train travelling from Istanbul in Turkey to Calais in northern France. Listen as writer and Agatha Christie superfan Harriet Gilbert summarises the story for BBC World Service programme World Book Club.
Poirot is on the train, heading back home to England from Syria, when two unconnected events take place. In a snowstorm in Croatia, the train comes grinding to a halt, and in one of the sleeping berths, a passenger is murdered. Since it's impossible for anyone to have reached the isolated snow-trapped train or to have escaped from it without leaving telltale footsteps in the snow, the killer can only be one of the dozen people sharing Poirot's coach. Yet as he starts to investigate, it seems that each of them has an alibi for the time of the murder. Impossible? Well, Poirot's certainly perplexed.
During a snowstorm, the express train comes to a grinding halt. It slows down until it stops altogether. Then someone is murdered.
The murderer can't have escaped without leaving telltale footprints in the snow. When something is described as telltale, it reveals information which allows a secret to be uncovered. For example, lipstick on your husband's shirt could be a telltale sign he's having an affair.
The murder victim is found in bed, stabbed with a knife. Poirot begins to investigate, but as he questions the train passengers one by one, it seems that everyone has an alibi. Proof that they were somewhere else when a crime was committed.
Naturally, this leaves the Belgian detective perplexed or confused because something is difficult to understand or solve.
I won't spoil the story by telling you what happens next, Neil, but let's just say that, as usual, Poirot uncovers the murderer using his incredible powers of observation.
In her stories, Agatha Christie describes Hercule Poirot as a very strange or eccentric man.
The author, Sophie Hannah, has written several new Poirot stories based on the characters invented by Agatha Christie before her death in 1976. Here she is describing more of Hercule Poirot's strange characteristics to BBC World Service programme World Book Club.
There's the sort of outward things, his appearance, which is very striking and very unusual, and his sort of, I suppose, foibles is the best thing to call them. You know, he likes neatness, he likes order, he approaches things very methodically, he's very proud of his luxuriant moustaches, you know, all of that.
Sophie calls Poirot's unusual behaviour his foibles, habits or characteristics which are considered strange or foolish, but which harm no one.
Yes, unlike the fictional murderers he uncovers, Poirot's foibles do no harm. But it makes me wonder if Agatha Christie's other famous detective also had unusual habits.
Well, first you'll have to reveal the answer to your quiz question, Sam. You asked me for the name of Agatha Christie's other famous detective, and I guessed it was A, Hetty Wainthropp.
Well, I'm afraid that was the wrong answer. In fact, Miss Marple was the name of Agatha Christie's second most famous character, although Hetty Wainthropp is a fictional detective on TV.
Well, now that we've solved the murder and revealed the correct answer, let's recap the vocabulary, starting with whodunit. A murder story which does not tell you who the murderer is until the end.
In the whodunit Murder on the Orient Express, the train comes to a grinding halt. It slows down until it stops altogether.
A telltale sign reveals hidden information so that a secret can be revealed.
An alibi is proof that you were somewhere else when a crime was committed.
To be perplexed means to be confused because something is difficult to understand.
And finally, someone's foibles are their strange but harmless habits or behaviour.
That's all for our 6-minute investigation into the mysterious world of Agatha Christie. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
6-minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6-Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Sam.
And I'm Neil.
In this 6-Minute English, we're celebrating the life of one of modern South Africa's founding fathers, the icon and Nobel laureate Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Archbishop Tutu was one of the leaders of the non-violent movement to end the system of racial segregation known as apartheid. Apartheid was enforced against the black population of South Africa by the white minority government from 1948 until 1991.
It's impossible to imagine South Africa's difficult journey to freedom without Archbishop Desmond Tutu. While other anti-apartheid leaders, like his close friend Nelson Mandela, were imprisoned or even killed, Archbishop Tutu was there at every step of the struggle. The rebellious priest speaking out against the injustices of apartheid. Archbishop Tutu was a hero of the 20th century.
He died in December 2021 and was laid to rest in Cape Town in a state funeral on New Year's Day. In this programme, we'll hear about some important moments from his life and, as usual, learn some related vocabulary as well. But first, I have a question for you, Neil. Nelson Mandela was sometimes affectionately called by his clan's name, Madiba. But do you know what nickname Archbishop Desmond Tutu was given? Was it A, the Des, B, the Bish, or C, the Arch?
I don't know, but I'll guess his nickname was C, the Arch.
OK, Neil. We'll find out if that's the correct answer at the end of the programme. Desmond Mpilo Tutu was born in 1931 in the town of Klerksdorp in northern South Africa. In this 2014 interview with BBC World Service programme Outlook, he looks back on some of his earliest childhood memories.
I had a very happy childhood. I'm a boy child between two girls. My sister sometimes thought that our mother rather spoiled me, pampered me. My mother was not educated much, but she had an incredible loving for people and was very generous. Part of my own unhappiness was precisely that anyone could want to take advantage of such a gracious, gentle, generous person.
As a child, Desmond Tutu's mother would pamper him, give him special treatment and make him feel special by doing nice things for him.
He also says his mother spoiled him, let him do or have whatever he wanted. Spoiling a child usually has a bad effect on their character as they grow up, but this doesn't seem to be true for Desmond Tutu.
What upset the young Desmond was how his mother was treated by some white South Africans who would take advantage of her, treat her unfairly for their own benefit.
In 1955, Desmond Tutu married his wife, Leah. They had children and the family moved to London for a time before returning to South Africa when Desmond was made Dean of Johannesburg.
He knew that returning to a racially segregated South Africa would be difficult for his family. In this interview with BBC World Service programme Outlook, Archbishop Tutu remembers one terrifying incident involving his wife Leah, who had gone to the Johannesburg Traffic Department to renew a car licence.
They handcuffed her and they walked with her in the street. I mean, she was paraded. And then when the court case was heard, my wife was acquitted. But they had done what they wanted to do, which was to humiliate her and in the process hit at me. I have to say that I found those actions near unforgivable, because I was the one who was out in the forefront. Although Leah, she's a toughie.
Police officers arrested and handcuffed Leah to humiliate her, make her feel ashamed and stupid.
When she went to court, Leah was acquitted, declared not guilty of committing a crime. But the police continued to harass her, even though his wife was, in his own words, a toughie, someone who is tough and determined.
Archbishop Tutu describes the event as near unforgivable, but in fact he did forgive the white police officers, and in 1991, at the end of apartheid, he started the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as a way of healing divisions between black and white communities.
What an inspirational life. But we still don't know what his nickname was, Sam.
Right. In my question, I asked Neil what Archbishop Desmond Tutu's nickname was.
I guessed it was the Arch.
Which was the correct answer. Affectionately known as the Arch, Desmond Tutu will be remembered as a man of peace and forgiveness. Right, let's recap the vocabulary we've learned in this programme, starting with pamper, to give someone special treatment.
If you spoil a child, you let them do whatever they want. But be careful, because they might take advantage of you, treat you badly for their own benefit.
To humiliate someone means to make them feel ashamed or stupid.
If you are acquitted of a crime, it is judged that you are not guilty.
And finally, a toughie is a slang word to describe someone like Archbishop Desmond Tutu or his wife, Leah, who is tough and determined.
Once again, our 6 minutes are up. Goodbye for now.
Bye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Sam.
And I'm Neil.
In this programme, we're talking about a famous leader and teaching you some useful vocabulary.
Like Chancellor, the person in the highest position in a government or university, and especially the title for the head of government in some European countries.
A country such as Germany. It's a position like the Prime Minister in the UK.
And one of Germany's longest-serving chancellors was Angela Merkel, who led the country from 2005 until the recent elections in September 2021.
Well, we're going to find out more about her soon, but not before I've challenged you to answer this question, Neil. Who was Germany's first ever chancellor? Was it A, Otto von Bismarck, B, Helmut Schmidt, or C, Franz von Papen?
Well, my knowledge of German history isn't great, but I'll go for A, Otto von Bismarck. That sounds quite likely.
Okay, I'll reveal the answer later on. But let's talk more about Angela Merkel now. She was in office for 16 years. In office means in power or in charge, until she stepped down last month.
Yes, that's a long time, which meant she had to make lots of decisions, popular with some people and not with others.
Over that time, she's gained a nickname, Mutti, German for mother. This could be seen as a compliment, but started life as more of an insult, as BBC correspondent Damien McGuinness explained on the BBC radio programme from our own correspondent.
The Mummy Merkel image, in fact, started off as an insult from Conservative rivals. It was made up during her first term in office by hardline Conservatives in her predominantly male party, a patronising put-down behind her back, to put her in her place as a woman, possibly even meant to be hurtful, given that in reality she has no children.
Oh dear, so the nickname of mother was really used as an insult to start with, probably invented by the men in her political party, described as the hardline Conservatives, ones with traditional and strict beliefs that can't be changed.
Yes, the nickname was used as a put-down. That's an insult used to make someone feel stupid or embarrassed, and the intention was to make her feel less important or to put her in her place.
Well, politics is full of insults and critics, but it sounds rather cruel. And Damien McGuinness does go on to say that this image is really a media myth and not quite accurate.
But the media has not always been negative about Angela Merkel. She is the longest serving amongst current EU leaders and participated in an estimated 100 EU summits. She's often been labelled as the only grown-up in the room, so the media has called her the Queen of Europe.
What is true is that following the recent elections in Germany, her successor, the person who became Chancellor, will lack the experience and gravitas that Merkel has gained over her 16 years as Chancellor.
But Damien McGuinness, in his report for the BBC's From Our Own Correspondent programme, concludes that many people aren't sure which of her nicknames is accurate. What word does he use to mean phrases or ideas that have become meaningless because they've been overused?
But the confusion around these clichés does point to another truth. The Chancellor is discreet to the point of sometimes being invisible. So there's a fascination about what's really going on behind that deadpan exterior. Angela Merkel may have been in power for more than a decade and a half, but people are still not really sure they know who she is.
He used the word clichés to mean phrases or ideas that have become meaningless because they've been overused. People are unsure which description of her is true because she is discreet. She keeps quiet about things so as not to attract attention.
Yes, it's hard to know what she's thinking because she looks deadpan. That means she looks serious. She doesn't show expression or emotion.
I wonder if Germany's first ever Chancellor had a deadpan exterior.
Yes, earlier you asked me who that was and I said Otto von Bismarck. Was I right?
Yes, you were. Well done.
Wunderbar. Now it's time to recap some of the vocabulary we've mentioned today, starting with Chancellor, the person in the highest position in a government in some countries.
Hardline describes someone with traditional and strict beliefs that can't be easily changed.
A put-down is an insult used to make someone feel stupid or embarrassed.
When someone is put in their place, they are made to feel less important than they are.
Clichés are phrases or ideas that have become meaningless because they've been overused, and deadpan describes someone's serious facial expression that shows no emotion.
Thank you, Neil. That's all for now, but don't forget there are lots more 6-Minute English programs to enjoy on our website at bbclearningenglish.com. You can also find us on social media and on our free app.
And if you enjoy topical discussion, like in 6-Minute English, why not try one of our other podcasts? In News Review, we take a big international story, discuss the vocabulary used in the headlines, and teach you how to use it in your everyday English. That's News Review from BBC Learning English. Try it out.
Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
6-Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6-Minute English and I'm Rob.
And I'm Dan.
Now, Dan, do you know who Michelle Obama is?
Yeah. Maybe the most famous woman in the world? Former First Lady, which means she was the wife of the President of the United States of America.
That is correct. She's just published her autobiography and has been talking in the UK about her life. Before we find out more, here is this week's question. When did the title First Lady first become used for the wife of the US President? Was it in the A. 18th century, B. 19th century, or C. 20th century? Any ideas, Dan?
This could be a trick question. The first US presidents were in the 18th century, and they had wives, but I think the actual term may only have been introduced much later. So I'm going to take a wild guess and say the 20th century.
OK, well, I'll have the answer later in the programme. Michelle Obama's visit to the UK was covered on BBC News. According to this report, where did she visit that she had visited before?
The former First Lady spoke openly about a number of issues, and one of her main messages was about empowerment. Earlier in the day, Mrs. Obama revisited a school in North London, a place where she says she was first inspired to focus on education during her time as the First Lady.
So, where did she revisit on this trip?
She went to a school in North London. She said it was at this school that she was first inspired to focus on education. If you're inspired to do something, you get a strong feeling that you want to do something. You feel a strong motivation to achieve something particular, often because of something someone else has said or achieved.
The report also mentioned that she spoke openly about a number of issues. To speak openly about something is when you discuss a subject, often a difficult subject, without trying to hide the facts or your feelings. It's a phrase that's used when people talk about things in their life that they find difficult or embarrassing.
One of the things she spoke openly about was her own feeling that she didn't really belong, that she didn't have the skills or talent to be doing what she was doing, and that she didn't deserve her position.
There's a name for that. It's called imposter syndrome. That feeling where you think one day everyone will realise that you're really not very good at what you do.
I get that feeling all the time.
Yeah, I wonder why. Because the thing with this imposter syndrome is that it isn't justified, it's more of a lack of confidence or a result of the way society labels us.
Well, anyway, back to the report. Michelle Obama was also keen to talk about the topic of empowerment. That's giving people the strength, confidence and power to achieve what they want in life by themselves.
Let's hear from Michelle Obama herself now, talking about how we sometimes judge people based on their class rather than their individual abilities.
That's often the mistake that we make. We assume that working class folks are not highly gifted in their own right, when a lot of times your station in life is limited by the circumstances that you find yourself in.
She says here that we assume things about people based on their social status or station in life. To assume means to make a judgment which is not based on the facts, but on what we think is true.
She uses the phrase "in their own right." When you say that someone is talented in their own right, it means that their talent comes from their own skills and abilities, and not because of any connection with any organisation, individual or class that they happen to be associated with.
Before we wrap up, time to get the answer to this week's question. When did the title First Lady first become used for the wife of the US President? Was it in the A. 18th century, B. 19th century, or C. 20th century? And Dan, you said...
I thought it was the 20th century.
Well, you were right.
Yay!
But let me finish. You were right in that it was later than the 18th century, which was when the first US presidents held their positions, but it wasn't as late as the 20th century. It was the second half of the 19th century when the title First Lady began to be used. Now let's review today's vocabulary.
We started with the phrase to talk openly about something. This means to discuss something, usually a difficult subject, without hiding your feelings, emotions or facts about that subject.
Then there was the noun empowerment. This is the process of giving people the feeling that they're in control of their lives, making people more confident in their rights and abilities.
The verb inspire was next. If you inspire people, you give them the feeling that they want to and can do something difficult or creative. If you have that feeling yourself, you are inspired.
Next, there was the verb to assume something. To assume means to make a judgment about someone or something, not based on proof, but on things you think or believe to be true.
The next phrase was in their own right. If someone is successful in their own right, for example, it means their success is because of their own skills and abilities, and not because of who they work for or work with or which social group they came from.
And finally, there was the noun phrase station in life.
Your station in life is your position in society, your social status.
And that brings us to the end of this week's programme. We'll be back soon, and in the meantime, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, our app, and of course the website bbclearningenglish.com. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.